I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order. Autumn, please call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Here.
Mr. Bub?
Here.
Mr. Koss?
Here.
Mr. Fennell?
Here.
Mr. Frazier?
Present.
Ms. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Labutus?
Here.
Mr. Lang?
Present.
Mr. Marmee?
Present.
And Mr. Rapp?
We have 9 here who are present this evening. If you please rise for the invocation by Mr. Blake, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Bow your heads. Lord, we come to you tonight asking for your guidance, asking to do the best in the interests of the citizens of Newark. Let us also remember this week Dr. Martin Luther King and his legacy of equality and justice for all, and wanting to take on racial justice, income inequality, and doing what's right for people. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Blake. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next under the agenda we have caucus. That's anything that pertains to the meeting tonight. Basically we have 3 items that we're going to use Rule 11 on. Mr. Cost and Mr. Marmee have both agreed on these 3, if I'm correct. Am I correct? Mr. Marmee does, Mr. Cost does. 1903 and 1906 are going to have public hearings later on, so we'll do those here in just a little bit after the public hearing. 1908 is a resolution we heard today in the that was in the Finance Committee, but we could not vote on it because it was a late item. I think I would just, why don't we just go ahead and do 1908 now? Autumn, would you read 1908?
Resolution 19-08
Point
by...
of order, Mr. President. I believe I need to excuse Mr. Rath first before we
that would be
vote on
nice.
anything.
Well, we're not out of caucus yet, but we can go ahead and do it.
Right. But in order for him not
that's
to
perfect.
vote, yeah. So I make a motion to excuse Mr. Rath.
Motion by Mr. Marmee, excuse Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Frazier. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Mr. Rath, excused. Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Autumn?
Resolution 19-08 by Mr. Marmee, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to negotiate and enter into contract without competitive bidding to accomplish necessary repairs on the North Fork Sewer Interceptor and declaring an emergency.
Heard the reading of 1908. It is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmee.
make a motion to adopt Resolution 19-08.
Second. Motion by Mr. Marmee, second by Mr. Cost. Is there any discussion on 1908? I know we've heard Mr. Loomis talk about that in the Finance Committee meeting. Seeing none, Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Koss?
Yes.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rapp?
1908 passes 9-0. Next on the agenda, we have our minutes of our January 7th, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Frazier, second by Mr. Lang. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes 9-0. Next, we have 2 reports of standing committees, one from Finance and one from Service. Without objection, those will be received and filed. And we have 3 reports this evening under reports from city officials. One from our auditor, who is coming around the corner. One from our auditor, who is coming around the corner. Would you like to come up here just a second? Our first communication is from Stephen Johnson, our city auditor. I'll just have you go ahead and read that title of that first communication, Mr. Auditor.
The first communication.
Yeah.
Stephen Johnson, City Auditor. The Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to the City of Newark for its 2017 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. This year's award represents the 26th consecutive year that this award has been received. The award is given for clarity, transparency, and financial reporting and demonstrating a full spirit of disclosure. And it also clearly illustrates our financial story.
Well, I think that deserves a hand.
Thank you. I would rather have a hand when we're doing this. It's time consuming.
We'll get back to you on that.
Can I take my seat now? Thank you.
Mr. Johnson. So not only are you recognized by the United States, but also Canada. How about that?
Next year, Mexico.
There we go. Wow. And then for the next year will be China. We have two other reports from city officials. Another one from Stephen Johnson, our auditor, which I won't make him read. The operating report for the period ending December 31st, 2018. And Barb Jobs, our city tax administrator, the revenue reports for the period ending December 31st, 2018. Without objection, those will be received and filed. And again, Mr. Johnson, congratulations.
Thank you.
Next, we have communications. We have two communications this evening. One from a citizen complaint, and the other one was the Ohio Division of Animal Control, the transfer application from Palumbo's Italian Market to River Road Coffee House at 26 North Park Place. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Next on the agenda, we're going to do the public hearings for the Rule 11 legislation we talked about earlier. First, we have a public hearing for 19-08. We're going to open the public hearing. Autumn, would you read, or 19-03, I'm sorry. Autumn, would you read the 19-03 for me?
Resolution 19-03 by Mr. Cost and Mr. Marmee, a resolution approving the renewal application for placement of farmland and agricultural district and declaring an emergency.
Do we have anyone who would like to speak for or against in this public hearing, this 19-03, the renewal application for placement of farmland? Anyone for or against? Anyone like to speak for or against? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Autumn, would you like to read that again?
Resolution 19-03 by Mr. Cost and Mr. Marmee, a resolution approving the renewal application for placement of farmland in an agricultural district and declaring an emergency.
Once again, Mr. Marmee and Mr. Koss have agreed that we could use Rule 11. This is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmee?
make a motion to adopt Resolution 19-03.
Motion by Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Koss. Is there any discussion on 19-03? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
And Mr. Rath?
19-03 passes 9-0. Next, we have a second public hearing for 19-06. Autumn, would you read that for me, please?
Resolution 19-06 by Mr. Cost and Mr. Marmee, a resolution approving the renewal application for placement of farmland in an agricultural district and declaring an emergency.
Is there anyone here to speak? We're going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak for or against the 19-06? Anyone for or against? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Autumn, would you please read 19-06?
Resolution 19-06 by Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee, a resolution approving the renewal application for placement of farmland in an agricultural district and declaring an emergency.
Once again, since this did not meet our timeline, Mr. Marmee and Mr. Koss have agreed to use Rule 11. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmee?
make a motion to adopt Resolution 19-06.
Motion by Mr. Marmee, second by Mr. Kost. Is there any discussion in 19-06? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll vote.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
And Mr. Rath?
19-06 passes 9-0. Okay, moving on. We have two sections for citizens' comment. This is the first one. Again, this is not a debate with council. This is just your chance to be heard. Do we have anyone like to speak this evening in this first section of citizens' comments? Okay. Moving on. Next, we have ordinances on the first reading, 19-01.
Ordinance 19-01 by Mr. Cost and Mr. Marmee, an ordinance extending the authority of the Temporary Board of Zoning District Revision.
19-01 will be held for 2 weeks, well, almost 2 weeks for a second reading for our next meeting, which is February the 4th. Next on the first reading, we have 19-02.
Ordinance 19-02 by Mr. Marmee and Mr. Cost is an ordinance amending ordinances passed on December 3rd, 2018, providing for the issuance of not to exceed $2 million of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of Buckeye Corridor Stormwater Plan improvements not to exceed $1 million of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of water system improvements and declaring an emergency.
19-02 is on its first reading, but it is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President.
Mr. Marmee.
Make a motion to adopt 19-02.
Motion by Mr. Marmee,
Second.
second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 19-02? Autumn, please call the roll and vote.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall? Yes. Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
And Mr. Rapp?
19-02 passes 9-0. Next, we have resolutions on the first reading, 19-01.
Resolution 19-01 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of municipal corporation.
And 19-01 will be held for till our next council meeting on February the 4th. And that concludes our legislation this evening. Thanks for your attention. Here's our second opportunity for comments from citizens. Do we have anyone for this second opportunity? Again, this is not a debate with council. This is your opportunity to be heard. Okay. Next, we'll move on to any city officials this evening who would like to speak. Our Honorable Law Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. All comments.
Thank you, Mr. Stephens. Mayor Hall.
Yeah, I'd just like to take a moment to thank Park Excellence Academy for doing a great job yesterday with the Martin Luther King Jr. Annual Breakfast. They organized it and hosted it out at the Reese Center, and the students did a great job with music and conversation, and everything was real good. Just to let everybody know, of course, they're housed in the old Miller School. Done a great job with that. That building couldn't possibly be sitting empty without them there. They expanded into 6th grade this past year and grew by 130 students. So a couple tidbits of information on them that I think everyone should know. And again, just they thank you for honoring Martin Luther King Jr. in our community. That'll pass.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Blake.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make council aware of a few of events coming up. Tomorrow night, Denison Econ professor, Paul Kaboub, he's going to be doing a presentation on job guarantee, economic theory, modern money theory, and I think it might be worth your time if you're available. It's at 6 o'clock at the downtown library here. Professor Kaboub will do a good job presenting a new theory about our economy. Bertie Cole from, the second event I'll make you aware of, Bertie Cole from Trinity AME Church. That congregation does an annual Black History program. This year it's going to be February 24th at 3 o'clock at Trinity AME, which is the Trinity next to the post office over on Church Street there. And so all are welcome to come to that. With that, I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Mr. Buck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to thank the administration and everyone working to get the roads cleared before and after the snow, and compliment Service Director Rhodes. It's great communication throughout the process. And through my time on council, collectively everybody's came a long way with pre-treating of the roads. It used to be just kind of wait till it all hit and kind of shovel and plow it out. And it's really getting ahead of the game. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Buck. Mr. Cost.
Thank you. I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Cost. Mr. Fennell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll pass.
Mr. Fennell. Mr. Frazier.
Mr. President, so the HACA Chicken Noodle Dinner was postponed last weekend because of the weather report. It primarily rained, but this weekend on Saturday the 26th, from 4:30 to 6:30, the Chicken Noodle will be held at the Central Christian Church. There is an auction and dinner. It's $8 a ticket for adults, $4 for children. I want to congratulate the Works on their proposal and their continued investment in our community to provide young people an outlet and an opportunity to be informed and learn about their community and learn about science, engineering, mathematics. And it's a really exciting time in technology. I'm also excited for the administration continuing to invest in infrastructure and capital improvements, especially in the water department that we're here today. And also thank you for Roger and the water department with the Northport emergency replacement. It really goes a long way, and it kind of shows us a glimpse of what that job is and what that life is. And that'll be it.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Ms. Hall.
Thank you. I'll pass.
Mr. Labutus.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to highlight some of the good work happening in the community. At the beginning of November, Scott Hayes was here and talking about Vertical 196. And since November 5th, I think they've served a little over 80 people at least per day. And they've been able to have 18 people that they have served find housing, and 19 have found jobs as well. So I think that's still a lot of room for improvement, but those are important things that they're doing. And I want to thank Scott Hayes and all those that are helping at Vertical 196 to serve the homeless community. With that, I will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Labutus. Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. Mr. Marmon.
Yes, need to call a finance committee meeting, and I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Marmon. I think we need to call an economic development committee meeting also, hopefully for 2 weeks.
I'll call an economic development committee.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you're
that. I'd also like to thank Mr. Rhodes. I really appreciate the communication you've done with the street cleaning, with the snow issue. You've been right on it, and if there's been any problems, you've been quick to respond, and that's been great to see. So I really appreciate it. So thanks for keeping us updated. Our next full council meeting will be Monday, February 4th. Our committees will start at 5:45. The main council meeting will start at 7 o'clock. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your attendance. So motion adjourned. Motion by Mr. Cost, second by Mr. Labutus. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you.